So, hey everyone, for this session, we're going to be talking with Carmen Rodriguez from the Department of Labor. And she's got a lot of information for us to know more about the child labor laws. So, we thank you for coming and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you. And I'm very happy to be here with you guys. So, my name again is Carmen Rodriguez, and I am serving as the acting community outreach and resource planning specialist for the Columbia, South Carolina District Office of the Department of Labor Wage and Hour Division. The Wage and Hour Division is the agency that enforces minimum wage, overtime, child labor, and record keeping. And amongst other laws that we also enforce, we have some laws that protect like the migrant worker or people that come with special visas, people that work in construction that are federally funded and things like that, and the Family Medical Leave Act. But today we're going to be talking about child labor, which is a very, very important subject and something that is very important, especially because it's the summer. A lot of kids are going to be looking for work. So we want to make sure that the parents understand what the kids can and cannot do. And we want to make sure employers understand what their requirements are and what their responsibilities are, and get the word out there.
Right. And you had a recent issue that transpired that made this come to.
Correct. Yes. I got some information from one of the investigators letting us know that he was involved in a case where a minor that was homeschooled was found to be working in violation. And that's what prompted, you know what, maybe this is a good subject to touch with homeschoolers and parents of homeschoolers.
Right. The rules still apply to us. We're not exempt just because we're not in school during the day. So these things matter. So we've got a few questions that are printed out on a little worksheet. So those that are following along and have their worksheet handy, we're just going to kind of work through these questions, and they can take notes if they like. So the first question that we have up for you is, why is it important for the community to understand what the federal child laws require?
Well, it's very important because when we find violations on child labor, penalties are immediately a given. There are going to be civil money penalties, and those can be substantial. They can add up very quickly if there's more than 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 minors worked. We're going to be citing violations per child. Therefore, those civil money penalties can go up very, very high. And most importantly, the number one reason really that we need to let everybody know is because we want to make sure that the kids are safe. Employers are responsible to provide a safe work environment that will not jeopardize their health, their well-being, and educational opportunities. So that is why it's very important to educate people and let them know what the requirements are.
Okay. And so the next one is, when's a business responsible to comply with the labor laws?
There are some exceptions, but for the most part, all the companies that are subject to the Fair Labor Standards Act are going to be subject to the child labor requirements. And exceptions would be, for example, if a minor is working for a parent that completely, solely, 100% owns the company, then that may be an exception. But for the most part, all the companies are going to be subject to it.
Okay. So what age can minors be employed?
All right. So with the exception of agriculture, and that's something else, and I don't know if you will have anybody that would probably have homeschoolers work in agriculture, but I did provide with some information on that. The minimum age is 14. Minors as young as 14 can be legally employed. However, there are some restrictions.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about those restrictions because there's 2 different types of restrictions. We have restrictions on hours for 14 and 15-year-olds, and then we're going to have hazardous occupation restrictions for all minors under 18. So first, let's talk about the 14 and 15-year-olds. 14 and 15-year-olds can work up to 3 hours on a work day, on a weekday, And a weekday will include Friday, even though they're ready for the weekend. So Monday through Friday, they can only work up to 3 hours a day. They can work up to 18 hours in a week when school is in session. And the public school system is the one that's going to determine when school is in session. And then they can work up to 8 hours on a non-school day. So on a Saturday or a Sunday, they can work up to 8 hours. When school is not in session, so for instance, right now in the summer, from June 1st through Labor Day, they can actually work up to 40 hours a week. They can only work between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. when school is in session. And again, during the summer, June 1st through Labor Day, those hours are extended to 9 p.m.
Right. And that applies to us, even though we're exempt from the regular school hours.
Correct.
Those rules apply anyway to homeschoolers.
Exactly.
All because they're of their age, they're following that time frame.
Correct. And the public school system is the one that's going to determine when school is in session. So during the pandemic, we had a lot of questions and a lot of people calling because the kids were they were doing virtual distance learning, not just the regular kids that do homeschooling, but a lot of kids were doing distance learning. However, the school was still in session. So they still were, we were still tied to that time frame.
Okay. Does that cover everything for 14 and 15-year-olds?
Yes, and we're going to talk about the 16 and 17-year-olds and the hazardous occupations in a moment.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, the prohibitions for 14 and 15-year-olds, was that everything?
Well, let's talk about what type of work the 14 and 15-year-olds can do.
I missed the question.
Oh, that's okay. So 14 and 15-year-olds can work in an office and do clerical work.
Okay.
They can do sales and they can run a cash register. They can work as baggers and help customers with their orders. They can pack orders, mark prices. They can do cleanup work and yard work. Most cooking is prohibited for 14 and 15-year-olds, but they can serve food. They can cook with electric or gas grills as long as it's not an open fire or an open flame. If they use deep fryers, those deep fryers need to be automatic, where they can just put the items in the basket and the basket will lower and rise itself without them having to do it. And they can also clean surface equipment, but this is a tricky one because anything that is power driven, they cannot even touch. For example, a meat slicer. If it's off, but if it's plugged in, it could cause an injury to a minor if they're cleaning it. So they cannot even clean a meat slicer. So they can clean just basic things around the kitchen, but not any power-driven machines.
Interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And those are the jobs they can do as well as prohibited.
No, the jobs that are prohibited for 14 and 15-year-olds.
Entire jobs. Okay.
Entire jobs, yes. Like manufacturing and mining, and we don't see that much of that anymore, but most processing occupations, operating any power-driven equipment, transportation of persons or property. Even 16 and 17-year-olds cannot be driving. And we'll get that again in a minute. They like warehousing and storage, construction. They cannot work in a construction area. They cannot work in or about boilers or engine rooms. Maintenance, repair of buildings or equipment. Outside window washing that requires them to work from window sills, they cannot do. Baking, they cannot do anything that has to do with baking. They cannot work with ovens, like open ovens and things like that. Work in areas where meats are prepared for sale. And then any other occupation that is declared hazardous occupation for all minors.
Okay. So does that affect anybody who's like just doing like an entrepreneurial thing? Like if they're baking cupcakes for, if for themselves.
They're doing it for themselves, like because they are their own business. That's something else. That's an exception.
Okay.
But working for a bakery, for example,
Correct. Yeah.
where if they want to hire 14 and 15-year-olds, that they might be very good with baking, but they're not going to be able to do any baking in a business as employment.
Okay. Interesting. All right. I'm learning too. All right. So we're ready to move on to 16 and 17-year-olds then,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, so let's talk about that. What sort of restrictions are there for that age group?
Okay. So we don't have hours restrictions for 16 and 17-year-olds. What that means is that they'll be able to work at different hours and later in the day as well. However, what we do find is that no minor can work in any occupation deemed hazardous or detrimental to their health and well-being. There are 17 occupations that no minor, anybody under 18, cannot perform. And I'm going to go through all 17, although there's a lot of them that we probably don't see anymore. Oh my gosh, sorry. That we don't see anymore. But let's talk about those. So, and we call them HOs, for hazardous occupations. So the first one is manufacturing and storing explosives. And then we have driving a motor vehicle. Let's pause on that one, because a lot of times we see golf carts, and a minor could drive a golf cart, but only if it doesn't cross a public road. So if it's let's say a golf course in a neighborhood, and the minor is driving that golf cart, if they have to cross any road where vehicles are going to cross as well, they cannot drive it there. But if they drive it from the course to the lot where they keep them and they clean them, that may be okay for the 16 and 17-year-olds. They cannot work in coal mining, forest firefighting, forecast fire prevention, power-driven woodworking machines, exposure to radioactive substances, power-driven hoisting apparatus. So there we have like forklifts. They're not going to be able to operate any forklifts. Power-driven metal forming, punching, shearing machines. Mining and other than coal. Power-driven meat processing machines. Power-driven bakery machines like the dough mixers. There's these big dough mixers. Minors cannot use those either. Power-driven paper product machine, scraper, and paper box compactors. So we see a lot of times, like in a mall, for example, where they do have in the back of the mall, they have like a paper baler. And a lot of times we find violations where the minors are actually going there and then pressing the button, but they cannot even do that. Not even if it's just pressing the button. If the machine is on, the minor cannot operate it at all. Manufacturing of brick, tile, and related products. Power-driven circular saws. So there we have in the construction area. Wrecking and demolition, roofing occupations. They cannot work in roofing at all. And the last one is trenching and excavation operations. Okay. So there's a lot of different ones that we do see frequently. So we just want to make sure that parents understand, like if their child is working at one location, just maybe ask the questions like, well, what type of work do you do, to see, for instance, if it's a restaurant, that there might be an oven or meat slicers or any dough mixers or anything like that. Just ask the questions just to see if they are operating those, and then understand if they're maybe in violation.
It's interesting that you mentioned the parent advocating on behalf of the child, because my daughter, when she was 16, got employed at a restaurant that closed at 9 o'clock at night, but she was out past midnight.
Wow.
Every week, every time. And I was like, this is a school night. She's out past till midnight. Is this going to be an issue? Is this just because of training, or is this the way that it's going to be? Because we're going to have to, change her hours of availability, because she can't be out that late on a
Right.
school night, she has to get up. She has things she has to do the next day. And they would not speak to me. They told me that I could not, that they would only speak to their employee. And I was like, really
Yeah.
unhappy with that. It's like, this is her first job. She has no idea how to advocate
Right.
for herself. And you won't speak to me? Like, that was the end of that job, though. So
Yeah. And the thing is that with 16 and 17-year-olds, there's no limitations on the number of hours or the time that they can work. But then, yes, that's when the parent comes in and says, like, you know what? I mean, we as parents want them to learn that responsibility, but we need to make sure that school comes first and that they're doing it in a safe environment.
Yeah. It seemed like excessive to me that it was so long after their close that they were still out. So I don't know. I don't know what was going on with that.
Yeah.
So, all right. So yes, but you can advocate for your child. That's a very important point.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, even if there aren't any rules, I was a little surprised that there wasn't something like a limitation. I'm like, wait, she's still in school. Like, is there not something? There wasn't. So, I mean, like, you're here to talk about, yes, these are the limits. So be sure you're under the limits. But when there are no limits and you're like, this is past what we're comfortable doing, you still want to be able to advocate for them.
Right.
So I appreciate that we are allowed to do that still. You mentioned that. So, all right. The next one then, are we on to how much a minor should be paid? Is that where we are?
Yes, we can talk about that. In general, minors have to be paid at least $7.25 an hour, which is the applicable federal minimum wage. And if they do work more than 40 hours a week, they have to be paid at least the time and a half of whatever the regular rate that they are being paid. So that does not change.
Yeah. All right. And then what are some of the most common violations the wage and hour division finds when it comes to child labor?
We find a lot of the minors driving vehicles, like for deliveries of food. We find a lot of them using meat slicers, and 14 and 15-year-olds using ovens, or there's other machines that are like a turbo toaster, and they cannot operate those either. The use and operation of paper balers is another very common one that we see. Like I mentioned, in the malls, we see that a lot. Nobody thinks about that. They just think, you know what, it's a minor, so just take the boxes to the baler and all you have to do is press the button. Well, they can't, because what if a piece of clothing gets caught or something like that? Minors working on roofs is another one that we have found a lot.
Huh. Interesting.
And I know, right? And then minors driving forklifts is another one that we have seen a lot as well. Okay.
All right. So yeah, it's important for the parents to know these things so that they can be informed if they know their child's doing these things and the employer's asking them to do the wrong things. Then
exactly. And here's the thing, that sometimes we can get complaints from the parents because they're concerned, but it goes beyond that. Sometimes even a teacher, for example, if they go to school and they mention to the teacher what they're doing and the teacher is concerned about it, they can also call us and file a complaint so that we can look into the matter. And child labor is one of those things that the moment we have a file where a complaint that is a child labor complaint, we are on it immediately. Even throughout the pandemic, for example, that we're doing all remote investigations. If there's a child labor complaint, we are actually going out and investigating it, because the number one priority is for the kids to be safe.
Yeah. And when you mention the penalties, that goes against the employer or the parent? Who's paying those penalties?
The employer.
Okay. Yeah. So they should be aware too that modify what they're doing before they incur a penalty for that kind of stuff. So yeah, important information to know. Mm-hmm. All right. So let's talk about where we can go to find more information. I'm going to pull up our website here for you.
I love this website. It's youthrules.gov. And this website has a lot of information. It has information for the youth. It has information for the parents. It has information for the employer. And it has information for even educators. because a lot of times the kids spend a lot more time with their educators than sometimes even their parents throughout the day. So they can be also advocates for the kids. So if they click on either one of the subtitles,
this one is the youth workers. It goes to this tab.
And it'll give you a lot of information on what to expect and fact sheets and whatnot. And then the parents can do the same and be able to see what their kids can and cannot do. We also have a phone number, which is 1-866-4-US-WAGE, 1-866-487-9243. That is the main number for us. And we have technicians that are ready to answer phone calls, and then you can get information that way. You can file even a complaint that phone number as well. We have over 200 wage and hour offices throughout the nation. So we find the right one for the person that's calling, and we can direct them directly to that one office so that they can talk to somebody in that office. And then, of course, we have our regular website, which will be the DOL.gov. So DOL for Department of Labor.gov/agencies/WHD for Wage and Hour Division.
I get a dot in there. .gov agency. DOL.gov
/agencies/WHD. And that will take them to our regular website. And again, they can search around there. Like there's that search engine on the top, and they can write child labor, and then all the child labor information is going to pull up.
Okay. Okay.
And then there's even videos, like there's a video up there, and there's videos. There's going to be a lot of information for everybody. So we have a lot of resources, and we have resources geared for employees and for employers. Because obviously our number one priority and our mission in the Wage and Hour Division is to have compliance, is to have employers in compliance with the law. So we have all the resources for everybody to be able to get the information they need to be in compliance.
Yep. We want the kids to be safe.
Yes, number one.
and as homeschoolers, we take on a lot of the responsibility for educating our kids. So, this is good information for us as we kind of carry those, extra little responsibilities of making sure that the doors of opportunity are open for our kids. And so making sure that the path is safe for them and we're doing the right thing. So,
right.
Yep. I really appreciate you coming today for talking to us about these, this important topic, and providing all these resources for us so that we can be informed. So
you're very welcome. And we'll always available. If you have any questions in the future, just give me a call and I'll answer them. And if I don't know the answer, I will find the answer for you.
That's right. So we'll see everyone in the next session then. So
all right. Bye. Thank you.